Pluto. President Trump faces an uneasy welcome in the anguished community of Squirrel Hill, home to the Tree of Life Synagogue, where 11 people were gunned down during services. Monday, the rabbi at Tree of Life said Trump is welcome to visit. Another big topic of conversation today involves President Trump saying he wants to order the end of the constitutional right to citizenship for babies born on American soil whose mothers entered the U.S. illegally. Speaking on AFR's Today's Issues program, AFA Council and radio host Abraham Hamilton III said few countries around the world have so-called birthright citizenship.
Very few. Among developed countries, it's only us and Canada. That's it. No European countries allow birthright citizenship, just the U.S. and Canada. Huge difference between us and Canada. Canada only has about 35 to 38 million people in the entire nation. Canada cannot survive without the continual influx of migrants. The United States of America is not Canada. So when you consider that, and you also consider that there are 300 to 400,000 children born to illegal aliens in America every year. This is something that we need to address. And among developed nations, even some that used to have birthright citizenship, like the UK, they have repealed that. So it's a conversation that needs to happen.
As you might expect, Democrats say the president cannot do this. Meanwhile, some Republicans, including House Speaker Paul Ryan, say the GOP didn't like it when President Obama did executive orders, and President Trump should not do an executive order on this issue. More information at onenewsnow.com. Tragedy at a school bus stop this morning in Indiana. Fox's Jeff Manasso reports.
State police say the school bus was facing northbound on State Road 25 in Fulton County. Its stop sign and crossing arm extended when a pickup struck 4 children crossing the southbound lanes toward the bus.
There are 2 boys and a girl that are deceased.
Sergeant Tony Slocum says the children are related. A 4th child was airlifted. The driver is cooperating. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
New York State has filed a lawsuit against a national jewelry retailer, claiming the company uses false and deceptive methods to dupe U.S. military members into illegal financing contracts for overpriced merchandise. The lawsuit alleges Harris Jewelry used its so-called Operation Teddy Bear charitable donations campaign to lure service members into high-priced in-house financing contracts. The company calls the allegations inaccurate and baseless and says it will contest the lawsuit. In final news, this hour, a euthanasia expert contends America must wake up to the issue and join the opposition. Charlie Butts reports.
Recently, the World Medical Association dropped consideration of a proposal to change current policy and support doctors helping patients kill themselves. Canadian and Dutch supporters, which were supporting the change, resigned over a non-related issue. But Rita Marker, attorney and executive director of the Patients' Rights Council, cautions that's not the end of the matter.
We have to be really clear. Those who are promoting doctor-prescribed suicide and euthanasia by lethal injection are not going to be true ever. This is going to be ongoing and ongoing and ongoing. We also have to recognize that those who favor such things are so tremendously dedicated.
So the subject will be pressed again and again and again. Opponents of doctor-assisted suicide, when hearing of victories, tend to celebrate for the moment and then go into a relaxation mode.
We have to help people know about it, and we have to help people get involved so that they can help others be aware of this, so that it won't just slip by because those who are promoting it are working continuously.
Why? 270 bills to legalize it have been introduced in state legislatures since Oregon approved assisted suicide in 1997. Marker suggests most people have not been aware of it, nor the states that have already authorized it. I'm Charlie Butts.
The Awakening on Urban Family Talk.
You know, a bunch of people who thought Obama was the Messiah. There are a lot of people who are kind of treating Trump like that.
Bishop E.W. Jackson.
Folks, I'm not looking for a Messiah. I've already got one. His name is Jesus, the Son of the living God. We put our ultimate trust in him. All other human beings are fallible.
The Awakening, weekday mornings at 9 Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Our message to the organizers and participants of this caravan is simple. As the President and Secretary Nielsen have made clear, we will not allow a large group to enter the United States in an unsafe and unlawful manner.
If you can't get asylum, will you consider crossing illegally?
Yes. I'm thinking that's no problem for me. Nobody over here because I want to go there.
So 5,000 troops won't stop you. You'll still go.
Yes, I want to go over there. Nobody can stop me, and nobody can stop these people.
This caravan is not. They're wasting their time. They are not coming.
What's the military going to be able to do? Obama and Bush both sent the National Guard.
But
it had no effect.
They're not me.
And now, Stacey Washington.
Welcome to the program. Today on the show, we're going to be speaking to Erin Hawley. She's the wife of Josh Hawley, and she's going to come on and talk about her new book, which is called Living Beloved, Lessons for My Little Ones About the Heart of God. And so it's going to be a pleasure to speak with her since I've spoken with her husband. It's going to be really just quite the privilege. Also today on the show, we're going to unpack these comments by Hillary Clinton, who once called people like myself, we need to bring them to heel. Those were her comments about blacks in inner cities who were plagued by crime and violence and poverty. And now she says we all look alike. Now, she was joking, but I'm just trying to imagine a Republican getting away with a comment like that. We are also going to talk about the issue with the border. And I have, my thought is pretty simple. Unintended consequences. The leftists and the Venezuelans and the Russians and the Chinese all trying to influence our election, all trying to strike back at Donald Trump for his really masterful negotiations against them on tariffs and trade and free trade agreements. And they are literally reeling from his 1-2 punches around the globe. He's good at what he does. And so they want to hit him where it hurts, the midterm election. If they can cripple him by getting Congress into the hands of the Democrats, he'll be too busy fighting Americans to fight them. At least that's what they think. But the unintended consequence of this ridiculous action of gathering together 10, 15, some estimates even say well over 15,000 people in numerous caravans all headed north. And they now have buses. They now have charter buses that they've been sent by well-meaning patsies on the left and the right, funding these things. Now they've caused the president to take the situation so seriously that these individuals, because we don't have the space to house them in any of our detention centers, they'll be housed in tents. And they will not be allowed to infiltrate into the interior of the country to await a so-called hearing. These people are going to be in tents waiting on an opportunity to become asylees. And 93% of people who apply for asylum are denied. Now, a huge portion of those people are still in the country, even though they've been denied because they never appear for their hearing. So President Trump's not going to give them the opportunity to skip the hearing because they're not going to be allowed to meld into American society and start working off books. It's really actually quite brilliant. And if you remember last week, I said on the show, and I also tweeted it out, my list of things that I felt the president should do. And a couple of those things are literally line by line exactly what the military is doing now. I said they should take C-130s and drop equipment, that they should set up basically a military command center, in other words, a forward base of operations to protect the border, that they should shut down all interstate commerce, or both of these nation states, interstate commerce between Mexico and the United States. They're not there yet, but that's what the preparations are about. That's what the equipment drops are about. They're going to have 4 Black Hawk helicopters down there. They're going to have 5,200 additional troops to supplement the 2,000 plus National Guardsmen that are there. And all of this to process asylum claims, and everyone else will be turned away. And the military will be there to ensure that no illegal crossings occur. So it may be the first time in maybe, I don't know, my adult lifetime that the border will actually be secure. And that's an unintended consequence of liberals and George Soros and foreign powers playing games with our country. Our sovereignty is not a joke. And I'm so glad we have a president who recognizes that. So we're going to talk about what the president is doing with the supplemental troops that are going down there. I have some audio for you from Kevin McClellan. He's the U.S. Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection. And then another bit of audio from General Terrence O'Shaughnessy, who's the head of the U.S. Northern Command. But right now, I want to get into the Daily Confession. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer, my God, my strength, in whom I will trust, my buckler and the horn of my salvation, and my high tower. That's Psalm 18:2. Psalm 28:7 says, the Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusts in him, and I am helped. Therefore, my heart rejoices, and I will thank him with my song. So some years ago, we had our pastor at the church we were attending. He was talking about a very difficult time in the history of his marriage with his wife, where they were expecting their oldest son, and when he was born, and this was before, they had so much testing and everything that they would do, during the pregnancy, all this amniocentesis and all that. This was kind of before that. And when the baby was born, he had a number of issues that the doctors were able to see right away. And so they took him to intensive care, and they began to pray. And of course, he was still a pastor back then, but a much smaller church. And he was talking about how they prayed and they prayed. And he said he remembered, his wife was still in the hospital for, a couple of days. And he was in the car driving back to their home to for the night. And he just began to weep and sob uncontrollably because of what he felt like, that their son might not make it. And he was just so overwrought. And he said in that moment, he felt the Holy Spirit say, my word says you can sing a song of praise. You can sing a song of lamentations. Sing a song over your boy. And so he did. He sang, obviously it's not your best singing voice if you're crying, but he said he sang to the Lord in that parking lot of the hospital. And he sang and he sang and he wept and he sang and he just kept on singing. And then when he felt like he just couldn't do anything more, he, drove home and went to bed for the night. And the next morning he came back to the hospital, visiting his son and his wife. And the doctors came in and said he'd made just an amazing turnaround overnight, and that they would, of course, have to treat him, and they were going to still have some maybe, difficult times ahead, but that they felt he'd passed the most difficult portion and that he was going to live. And he shared that with us, saying, you got to sing a song over these issues that you're having, these problems, because God is greater than all of these problems. And when the Lord is described as our rock, our fortress, what is a fortress? It's an impenetrable place where if you go inside and lock the door, your enemies cannot reach you. That's our God. He is our deliverer. The deliverer is the one who comes in and without a shadow of a doubt gets that innocent verdict for you. He banishes your accusers. The deliverer carries you out of the hand of your enemy to safety. That's our God. He's our strength. Strength is something that it's comes and it goes, but if you have strength in an area, it means you've worked in that area and you're strong in that area. And the inference there is that he has a powerful, unassailable strength that he gives to us when we abide in him. So he's our strength. It says, in whom I will trust. So the decision is yours. Will you trust him? Will you give him your problem? If you're angry about the problem right now, it's not that God can't help you there too. Sometimes we feel like, well, I can't be angry in front of the Lord. I'm not talking about being angry at God or railing at God. I'm talking about being angry at the person or the circumstance. And then you go to God with that anger and you say, you know what, Lord, I'm angry. I'm angry here. I'm hurting. I'm angry. And this is what I'm angry about. God wants us to rely on him. He wants us to call him instead of calling a friend or a neighbor. And these are good people, so there's nothing wrong with them. But God is the source. We take our problems to him. It says, my buckler and the horn of my salvation. The horn of salvation is the loud horn that they blow. And for miles away, people can hear it. Meaning our salvation is something that is widely known and reported. And it is a sweet fragrance to God that we belong to him and that we have a relationship with him. And my high tower. In days of old, if you had a high tower, they would put the king and the queen and the princesses and all that, they'd put them in the high tower because that was the one place that would be the last to go down in an invasion. It was the safe place, and you could have archers up there who would shoot down the enemy. God is our high tower. He's not a man that he should lie. He's not mocked, and he does not change. He's not in heaven, seated on the throne thinking, I'm not a high tower today. You know how we human beings can get, I don't really feel like, I don't feel like being nice today, or I don't feel like being kind today, or I don't feel like being long-suffering today, or I don't feel like talking today. we have our feelings and we abide by them much of the time, but God's not like that. He doesn't change. He doesn't shy away from us when we need his saving, delivering, when we need his strength. He's always, always there. So, daily confession, go to the rock. Tell him about your anger, your sadness, your pain. Let him deliver you. Let him be your shield. Let the glory of the Lord be your rear guard. Let him be your fortress, your high tower. He is the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, and he is for you. Go to him. All right, now I want to turn to this. This is a huge story today. I woke up this morning to audio of the president talking to reporters from Axios about the fact that you don't need an act of Congress or a change to the Constitution to eliminate the so-called birthright citizenship. Now, spoiler alert, you know how much I like Ann Coulter. We've had her on the show twice. I'm hoping to get her back on to talk about this. But in the meantime, pretty interesting to see that he is echoing her research and deep dive into what the Constitution and the founders were talking about in the 14th Amendment. It had to do with slaves. Now, full disclosure, on my father's side, I'm directly descended from slaves and proud of it. I am what God made. On my mom's side, from immigrants. So I got a foot on each side of this, and I'm happy to talk about it, but I'm an American. An American, meaning that I feel we should protect our citizens first. Now, when he's talking about the birthright executive order and the possibility of one, this is an unintended consequence of the Caravan and also the intransigence of Congress, because we have people on the right and the left who really don't want to see a sealed border. They don't want to see an end to cheap labor. They don't want to. They like the status quo. So here he is in number 7.
Now, how ridiculous. We're the only country in the world where a person comes in, has a baby, and the baby is essentially a citizen of the United States for 85 years with all of those benefits. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And it has to end.
Have you talked about that with council?
Yeah, I have.
So where in the process?
It's in the process. It'll happen. With an executive order. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yes,
it's a very interesting. I didn't think anybody knew that but me. I thought I was the only one.
So he's basically expressing some surprise there that this reporter is aware of what the president has been shared of counsel. Now, I want to shout out to people who are listening terrestrial radio in all of our states, 32 states across the country, 800 communities. Thank you so much for being here. Also, shout out to the live streams and people who are listening there. Share the show if you're on Facebook. Share it so people know you're listening and that they'll possibly like the program and do more with it. And one more quick shout out to David McGuire. He said about an hour ago, he was at a busy intersection in his city encouraging black voters with his homemade sign to tune in to Stacey on the Right. Tulsa, Oklahoma. David, you're awesome. Thank you so much for doing that. God bless you. That's pretty awesome. I couldn't even have thought of that up as advertising, but Tulsa, Oklahomans, hey, what up? And thanks for tuning in. So you heard the president there, and here's how I think it will go. Now, remember, I don't proclaim to have a crystal ball. I don't believe in crystal balls, but there are some logical things that we can assume and infer from what the president's discussing here. So first of all, we know that if he writes an executive order that says that, you know, birthright citizenship applies only to children born of 2 American parents. So no American would be disenfranchised by an executive order worded to mirror what the Constitution's intent was, which was to protect the children of freed slaves from being deported from this country. Since we no longer have slavery, we don't have any living freed slaves, and their children are already citizens of this country, there's no danger to any American by the possibility of this executive order. What it does do is it opens up the possibility that some activist judge in the loony Ninth Circuit or any other of these liberal-leaning circuits would issue a nationwide injunction on the executive order by the president, which would prompt the president's lawyers to go straight to the Supreme Court for them to rule on the constitutionality of circuit court judges enjoining the president from actions that are duly given to him under the Constitution. The court is now controlled by the conservative majority. In other words, bring it on. We'll be back with Erin Hawley, wife of Josh Hawley, right after this.
Hello, I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. Well, the last 2 years, we've just had tremendous response, early response to the announcement that we're going to Israel on a Holy Land tour. We're going March of this year. We go March of every year. Last year, we filled up like early fall, and I expect us to fill up early fall this year as well. So if you're interested in this March 14th through the 22nd tour, and you'll be going with primarily supporters of AFA and AFR, just get the brochure and check it out. You can call us today at 800-FAMILIES, 800-FAMILIES, option 5, and leave us your name and your address, and we'll mail you a brochure. If you simply want to go online, all the information is there. It's at twholyland.com, twholyland.com. If you want to go in March, we're filling up, and we're filling up fast. So check it out, twholyland.com.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. I recently heard a young preacher give a wonderful message. At the same time, I was a little bothered by how he said what he said. It kind of reminded me of myself years ago. He drew some conclusions about God and how he works that went beyond what the Bible teaches. It came across as if he had it all figured out, like he had every answer there was about God. In Job chapter 42, verses 2 through 6, on the back end of Job's incredible turmoil, adversity, and suffering, Job comes to grips with his limited knowledge of God. I think there is something for us to learn here. Listen to these words beginning at verse 2. I know that you can do all things, and that no purpose of yours can be thwarted. I have declared that which I did not understand, things too wonderful for me, which I did not know. Hear now, and I will speak. I will ask you, and you instruct me. I have heard of you by hearing of the ear, but now my eyes see you. Therefore I retract, and I repent in dust and ashes. I want to draw out 3 perspectives from these words. Number 1, God is in charge. Job says, I don't understand things. I talk more than I really know, but I acquiesce. I surrender. You're in charge. Number 2, we will never know all that there is to know about God, even in heaven. Then thirdly, what we know about God should produce repentance and humility, not arrogance and pride. Well, here's what I want you to remember today. Resist the temptation to take pride in what you know about God. The truth of the matter is that we may not know as much as we think we do, and there is so much more to learn.
Crawford Loritz is senior pastor of Fellowship Bible Church in suburban Atlanta, Georgia. For more information, go to livingalegacy.org, livingalegacy.org.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the show. Head over to stacyontheright.com and join the thousands of people who are on the newsletter list. Just hit the subscribe button. I never sell the list. The only people who ever see it is, actually, I don't even see it. It's inside of a little MailChimp database, and your information is protected, and unsubscribing is just as easy as subscribing because the list is never sold, and I make no money off of that. So it's just you and me and the newsletter. And I'd also like to encourage you to follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Join the revolution. All right, so it's my pleasure to welcome our next guest. I so enjoyed my interview with her husband, who is Attorney General Josh Hawley, running for the Senate seat here in the state of Missouri. We also asked his opponent, Claire McCaskill, to join us here on the show, and she has refused by simply not replying, but that is not our fault. So we were happy to speak to Josh, and it's my pleasure and honor to get to speak to his wife, Erin. She is an attorney. She's also the author of the new book, Living Beloved, Lessons for My Little Ones About the Heart of God. She's an associate professor of law at the University of Missouri School of Law. Erin, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about the book. Why did you write a book about your kids and God, and what brought all this on?
Well, really, it was kind of a transition to being an attorney and law professor. And in that transition period, really, I think my sort of go-to method had simply been to work harder. And as the moms and parents listening know, that doesn't sometimes working harder just doesn't quite work. So it was in this sort of transition period that the Lord really encouraged and comforted me from maybe a unique place and not my own kids. And seeing in them sort of the traits that I think Jesus wants to see in us. As you'll recall, when Jesus was talking to his disciples, is actually made up of such as these. And what he's referring to is small children. So if you look at children, you see their infectious joy, you see their just willingness to trust, their desire for relationship with their parents that trumps everything else. And anyhow, in this transition period, God really encouraged and comforted me by just looking at my own kids.
And so the book talks about mothers, young mothers, and their chance to grow their identity as children of God simply by observing their own little ones. And you're encouraging Christian moms to view early motherhood as a wonderful tutoring lesson from God, as a lesson on how to grow closer to him and live beloved as his child. Now, I'm a little further along in the mothering arena than you are, but I remember those days where my kids were teeny tiny and every moment of the day was dedicated to them. And once I got past the initial exhaustion, there were opportunities for me to show them, that I'm reading the Bible. Come over, let's, look at some verses together, and to have little board books for them that were Christian board books and little tiny Bibles that they could hold on to and carry to church when we would go to church. And I really found it was like a refreshing, almost like a living water experience where I began to see God differently because I was a mom. And I thought we all think we know so much, we're in our 20s. Yeah. But I thought I knew a lot, but I was shown through mothering how little I knew. Do you find that women are receptive to what you're sharing in the book and how they can use that to it's a growing experience?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, a friend of mine became a Christian just a few years ago, remarked that she probably wouldn't have become a Christian without having first become a mom. Because I think as moms, we have this sort of, it's imperfect, but it's a modeling of the Father's love for us and how we just adore our children because they are and because they're ours, not because they do anything. And these sorts of, that unconditional love that we feel for them is, I think, a mirror of what the Father God feels for us. In addition to sort of the refreshments that we get from them, as you say, I think my favorite actually translation or loose translation of the Bible is actually the Jesus Storybook Bible. And it's written for children, but it's just a wonderful version. And as I read to them like you did, it's refreshing because you see it through their eyes, and it really does just take a childlike faith in God and in Jesus, and they remind us of that.
It does. So what are you hoping to, because I know sometimes the offshoot of writing a book is that obviously you're going to come into contact with a lot of people who are going to encounter the book, and then they're going to encounter you and realize, oh, your husband's in politics, but this book is about Christianity, and really it goes to the heart of any person. How have you been navigating that kind of, it's a little bit of a dichotomy when, you're in the political realm, but you've written this book that's not a political book?
Sure. So the book itself is, you say absolutely apolitical. It's about Christianity, it's about one's faith and being a mom, and nothing to do with politics. But I am blessed by a husband who has a deep faith himself, so that's something we share and can hopefully instill and pray that our children accept Jesus and those sorts of things. So it's, on the one hand, it's very different than politics maybe, especially today. But on the other hand, it's very consistent with our family. So we're hoping to stay that way.
Well, I think that's pretty exciting because, the outcome of the election could radically change your experience because it's one thing to be Attorney General of the state of Missouri, and that's a very, very consequential position. And I think that your husband has been doing some amazing work on behalf of Missourians from the Attorney General's office. But should he attain the Senate seat, there will be a lot of people who will be looking to see, okay, Josh Hawley, who is he? Erin Hawley, who is she? And this book goes a long way in kind of laying out who you are as a Christian, as opposed to the wife of a politician and a university professor and attorney. It's a really interesting time to have the book come out and kind of in the fray of all of this other really momentous activity.
Yeah, and I really just have to think it's God's timing in that, and hopefully grounding them in faith, and maybe let people see a side of our family that is different from politics, and yet just as important, and sort of the cornerstone being introducing faith to any Christian family, and I hope that will come through and maybe be an opportunity to be positive.
Mm-hmm. I think it will. God's word does not go out and return void. It always accomplishes its purposes. And a book like this, I think, will be it'll be a balm to the soul of many a young mom, especially young moms who might stumble upon it, and maybe they're not Christians, or maybe their household isn't yet Christian, and they can learn a lot from what you've written here. Very exciting, and thank you so much for joining the show today to talk about the book, and good luck with everything with your family and with your husband.
Wonderful to visit. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Erin. That's Erin Hawley. She is the wife of Josh Hawley, Attorney General of the state of Missouri, and she's an associate professor of law at the University of Missouri School of Law. She's also written this wonderful book, she's an author. It's The Living Beloved, Lessons from My Little Ones About the Heart of God. I will have the link to the page on Amazon where you can buy it. I will throw that onto the streams that are going right now on Facebook and everywhere else. So if you'd like to, you can partake of that. It sounds like a fantastic gift for a young mom, or new mom, someone who's expecting. This would be a great gift to put in their stocking for Christmas. So I posted that there, and you guys can take a look at that. So I want to turn back to, because we have a little bit of time left in this segment, and I think, if someone listened to this show and they're pro-immigration at all costs or pro-DACA, they might think, well, she's just against immigration, period. She's just against it. And that might be something that you might think, but that's absolutely not true. And I know a lot of times I've criticized people for saying we should do things the way Europe does things. I don't believe in looking at other countries and saying that's a blanket policy that would work here. European nations are individually the size of our smaller states. Population-wise, they're larger than our smaller states, but landmass-wise, they're tiny places. And they're also European, meaning they've had monarchies. We've never had one. So there's not a lot of correlation between what an American would think and accept from their government and what a German or a Frenchman or an Italian would accept from their government. And if you don't believe me, you got to get out of the country. You got to get out of America and go to one of these places, Spain, Italy, France, Germany, Great Britain. You will notice immediately the difference in the people there. Does it mean they're not excellent or they're not wonderful people? Of course not. I grew up in Germany. I've been to England. I've been to France and the Netherlands. I've been to Russia back when it was the USSR. I've been to Saudi Arabia. I've been all over the globe, and especially all over Europe. Austria, France 4 times, Spain 4 times. I mean, I've been to these places. And there's nothing better than going to one of these European countries and experiencing their culture. Switzerland, I mean, it's so different. But it doesn't mean that if you go there and they have light rail over the entire country, that we should bring light rail to the entirety of our country. Now, one area where I don't see a lot of liberals saying that we should be like European nations is the fact that we allow people to use tourism, come here 6 weeks before they're due to have their baby, the very last moment they can fly without having a doctor's note. They fly to the United States and stay in a posh hotel. They shop. They get to know the American city they're living in. And then they have their baby and they get a birth certificate from the hospital that shows that their child was born here. And then they stay a little while longer and make sure they and their baby are well enough to travel. And then they go back to China. Birth tourism is huge in China because wealthy Chinese women want to have the option of sending their kids to American universities when their kids graduate from high school. Some of them even bring them back for high school. And they're taught English and Mandarin simultaneously, so when they come back, they can speak English. And they want that American experience because the creative engine of our public education system is not matched in China in any way. Not in their private schools, none of it. None of it even compares. And so you have around 50,000 Chinese women a year who give birth in America, and those children are considered Americans. But how so? The 14th Amendment doesn't provide for any foreigner to come here and have a baby and have that baby be an American. It provides for the children of freed slaves to be Americans if they're born in this country, which they would be because their parents were slaves, and this is before air travel, so you didn't have people flying all over the country. Traveling outside of the country was a thing that only the very wealthy and well-connected would ever do. So that's the basis here. The other thing that's interesting is when you look at law in, let's say, south of the border where all these people are coming from, in Mexico, you cannot simply, as an American, travel to Mexico and have a baby in a Mexican hospital or on the sidewalk somewhere and have that baby be a Mexican. According to Mexican law, a child born in Mexico is the nationality of its parents. So if you're an American, your child is an American. Isn't that kind of logical? So the issue here is not that President Trump is trying to end birthright citizenship for Americans. He plans to end the faux application of a law that was meant to help freed slaves and their children to remain in America. His plan is to eliminate the complete and utter, it's like the law's been turned inside out and used to give citizenship to millions of people who would not otherwise have been considered Americans. The other way that we know that this is not a commonality is if you look at the children of active duty military members. Active duty military and their families often have their children abroad. My sister was born in Panama. She received dual citizenship from Panama and the United States at her birth. And at 18, the U.S. government required her to renounce one and accept the other. It wasn't like she got a brochure about this is America's so awesome, pick us. It was, you need to apply for a Social Security card. This is before they start issuing them around, basically it's mandatory within the first 12 months after the birth of your baby now. But back then you had to have one by the time you were 18. By the time this occurred, we were already living in Germany and she'd been born in Panama. So she received a document from the U.S. government and it had her Social Security card application and it had a renunciation. And all she had to do was check the box and sign it in front of a witness. And she chose to be an American citizen and basically checked the box renouncing her citizenship in Panama. And that was it. Now, but that's Panama. Most countries, including all European nations, I can't go there and have a baby and have my baby be French. My baby would still be an American. The same with diplomats who travel to this country or live in this country and their wives get pregnant and have babies. Those babies do not have American citizenship. They don't have dual citizenship. They're the citizens of their parents' nationality. And so that is what the president is trying to do here. So on the media right now, you hear them saying, well, last week he said he was a nationalist, and this week he wants to take away birthright citizenship. Don't listen to that. So you know that people who are proponents of the current system, the current broken system where our laws are not followed, people do not follow our laws, and actually, when you speak to foreigners who want to be citizens of the United States, one of the things that they talk about, the ones who aren't coming here because they want to take part in the American dream, the ones who are coming here and overstaying visas, the ones who are coming here illegally, they talk about how easy it is to get public assistance in America and how we have this huge welfare state. Do you think we'd have to borrow 40 cents on every dollar if we weren't importing citizens from countries that they're sending us people who they're indigent, they need expensive cancer treatments, they need all this stuff that they can only get in America? If we were getting engineers, lawyers, doctors, which we do get some of those, but if the majority of our immigrants were of that professional class, do you think our welfare state would be so outsized that we'd have to borrow as much money as we do to support it? And that's the question here. So as Christians, we have to want to abide by the law. And we just have 1 minute left. Let's go to the phones. Jacob in Alabama. Hey, Jacob, we have about a minute left. What's your comment?
Yeah, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. It's been a long time, but I've been listening. You bring up some great points, and as far as the immigration situation is concerned, they had a plan, to come into the country and get that catch and release situation, and never come back. And that's the whole situation. Is that has to be stopped. And I've been praying, and I'm thankful that President Trump has taken care of that situation, because that catch and release doesn't make any sense. And they get another caravan waiting to come, and this is the whole plan. So thankful that you're speaking about it, and you got to be militant about this, because this is literally an invasion.
It is. It really is. And Jacob, you hit the nail on the head. It's an invasion. No other country would allow it. We shouldn't allow it. Thank you so much for calling the show. I also want to point out that the incubation time for communicable diseases is longer than 20 days. So children who are held for 20 days and then released into the country, possibly carrying diseases that we've already eradicated that we no longer vaccinate for, Just one more danger and reason why we should put a stop to this. We'll be right back.
What does it take to live an uncommon life? Here's former Super Bowl winning coach Tony Dungy with today's uncommon moment.
Joe Green, one of my teammates on the Pittsburgh Steelers, once told me about the time he was ready to quit. The team had been losing, so one day in 1972, he cleaned out his locker and headed for the airport. One of the Steeler coaches eventually persuaded him to return, but his story illustrates one of the challenges of leadership, keeping everyone on the team focused and committed to the mission through thick and thin. Whether with our personal goals or as leaders of others, we must always keep the vision out front and readily accessible. It's easy to forget sometimes why we do what we do, but keeping our eyes on the prize can keep us going.
Tony Dungy. Discover more at CoachDungy.com. That's CoachDungy.com.
Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fool because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Corner, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk.
Please call your senators today. It's time to put an end to the liberals' filibuster. Tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood now. Call the Capitol Switchboard at 202-224-3121 or go to afaaction.net. Again, call 202-224-3121 and tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood. Your call will make a difference.
From America's election headquarters.
The candidates in the Missouri Senate race making their final arguments. Incumbent Democrat Claire McCaskill facing a Republican challenge from the state's Attorney General Josh Hawley. They debated last week on KMBC TV, McCaskill stressing her focus on key issues.
Your wages, health insurance, prescription drug coverage, veterans benefits, border security.
Hawley pointing out their differences.
She's a liberal Democrat who has opposed the president at every turn, opposed the agenda that the people of this state voted for.
Both promised a compromise.
I work with my Republican colleagues.
I'm willing to work across party lines with anybody to stand up to my party when they are wrong.
But McCaskill complained.
He lies about my record.
While Hawley said his priority would be
fighting for the values of Missouri.
President Trump won Missouri by 20 points in 2016. Polls show the Senate race is one of the closest in the country. Joy Piazza, Fox News.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
In terms of our preparations at the border, yesterday we launched Operation Secure Line, a multi-phased and flexible operational response designed to ensure that we are prepared for any number of contingencies involved with the arrival and attempted crossing of a large group of intending migrants at our border, whether they attempt to cross at a port of entry or unlawfully in between ports of entry. An important principle here is that border security is a law enforcement mission, and as the Unified Border Security Agency of the United States, CBP is well equipped, along with support from interagency federal, state, and local partners, to manage multiple contingencies of varying size. Since we initiated our planning 2 weeks ago, we have completed updated assessments of each of our 26 crossing points on the southwest border and already deployed 100 specially trained special response team operators to prepare plans for each location. As information on the approach of a large group at a port of entry is available, we have at the ready 1,000 CBP officers, including 250 tactical enforcement officers and mobile response team professionals with training on managing contingencies, including riot control. Between ports of entry, we have an additional 830 Border Patrol agents on standby ready to deploy, to include 140 Special Operations agents, 385 Mobile Response Team agents, and an additional 350 agents from unaffected sectors. These agents will be augmented and supported by over 24 CBP air assets for surveillance and mobile response, including 4 Blackhawks, 6 additional helicopters, as well as multiple fixed-wing assets and unmanned aerial systems.
Does that sound like they're playing around to you? Nor to me. I'm excited to hear that they're planning on taking our national sovereignty seriously. And this is what I tweeted out. I just want to give it to you real quick before we go back to the phones. I would, if it were me and I were in charge, and that's certainly a stretch of the imagination, but I thought about what do we see going on at the southern border? What do we see as the impending danger of this new caravan coming up and the caravans behind it? I would seal the border for 90 days, stop all remittances from here to Mexico, stop the new trade deal from going through, station 10,000 armed National Guardsmen on the southern border. I would end, not suspend, all U.S. aid to the entire South American continent, and then I would build a military base there. You don't need congressional authorization to build a military base. I know this because we stand down military bases all over the country under base realignment and closure. It's a regular operational function of the Department of Defense, and also building new bases. You don't need congressional authorization. So that's what I would do to start. Let's go to the phones. Paul in California. Thank you so much for calling the show. Good to talk to you.
Hi, Stacey. Big fan. Thank you for taking my call.
Hi. Thanks for calling.
So, my comment is, and I wondered if you thought about this, but the Texas border with Mexico is bordered by a river, the Rio Grande. There's no wall anywhere along that border, and it's a big border. So, I mean, I know these people, and they're not going to just go away if we tell them to go home. I think they'll wait it out. Is there a plan on a time frame as far as our military being there? How long are we going to be there on that border?
I don't think so. But again, so I thank you for calling. I'll let you hang up so you can hear the answer. And so I actually had a discussion about this with a military veteran who used to deploy dropping their mobile command centers for AWACS helicopters. And this was, obviously 20 some odd years ago, but someone who's pretty familiar with forward operations. And he said that they would have orders to go in and drop these mobile command centers and set them up, run the cables between them and set up the command center. And they would get the orders to go sometimes 4 days before, sometimes a couple weeks before. And then within 48 hours, the mobile command center would have to be operational. And they would set it up and get it operational. And then at the closeout, when it needed to be removed, it was the same thing. They would get the notification and they could shut it down in less than 24 hours and get it out of there. So this is a much larger operation because the landmass that is being discussed here, especially as the caller just mentioned on the border there in Texas, where there's a river and there's, kind of craggy, rocky, almost mountainous regions as well, it's going to require monitoring. And that's where the Black Hawk helicopters come in. They're going to be monitoring the areas where they can't stand up physical barriers, but they can station troops within, viewing distance of these areas that are easily crossed by humans on foot, but not easily sealed up. Those areas can be monitored and patrolled by people on foot, people in, all-terrain vehicles, Humvees, etc. The other thing that I think is important to note is, so the U.S. military is actually not very good, while they can stand up and stand down forward operating bases at the drop of a hat. The U.S. military is not known for going into an area and setting up a whole bunch of equipment and then leaving. Look all over the country, look all over the globe where we have bases. You'll usually, if you go back to the historical insertion point, you'll find that they said, oh, we'll have this base here for 2 years max, 4 years max, 5 years max. Sometimes they'll say this is a project that has a 10-year operating window, and then after that, we're going to extract. Usually, decades later, those bases are still there and operational. Now, there is one caveat to that, which is that this is a proposed base or military operation on American soil, but we're talking about an area of the country that up until now has been largely unregulated. Remember, I read the story here on the air a few months ago of a woman who spent months living among the ranchers at the southern border and learned how many of them had been broken into and robbed at gunpoint in their own homes. Some of them had been forced to take their trucks and load them up with illegal aliens and drive them over a mountainous region so they could meet up with drug mules, and they were carrying drugs. And these people were told, if you tell anybody, we'll come back and we'll kill you. We're a part of a multinational drug operation, and we have gang members on this side of the border as well, and we'll snuff you out if you say anything. And elderly people who owned ranches and used to be very active, who they just sleep with their doors locked and their gun by their bed, and every time they come home, they've been broken into, their refrigerator's been emptied out. People will sit in their kitchen and eat their food while they're not home and then leave a huge mess for them. Illegal aliens traversing their property. We're talking about a problem that has been unaddressed and has it's been allowed to fester to the degree that Americans aren't safe in their own homes. And I can tell you, I am not the biggest cheerleader of President Trump, but I know a winner when I see one. And when I say a winner, the president isn't perfect and he's not a winner on every single issue. But on immigration, he and I are this close. There's no space between us. And it's not because he's a nationalist or he's a racist or he's, anti-Semitic. All of these are lies from the pit of hell that have been hurled at him because he wants to stop some people from making money on the backs of Americans who are being kidnapped and killed and raped. Remember, I'll never get tired of reminding you of what illegal aliens are doing in this country. In the year 2017, fiscal year 2017, ICE reported illegal aliens committed more than 76,000 drug offenses, 48,000 assaults, 11,000 weapons offenses, 5,000 sexual assaults, 2,000 kidnappings, and more than 1,800 homicides. This is on my Twitter feed. You can scroll right through and retweet it if you want to. You can also screen grab it and share it with friends. This is what's happening in our country. 2,000 kidnappings? Imagine what those families have been through. 1,800 homicides, that's 1,800 Americans who don't get to live out the rest of their life in pursuit of happiness because some illegal alien decided it was their time to go. Assaults, drug offenses, weapons offenses, 5,000 rapes, 5,000 women and children raped that didn't have to be. So I'm perfectly fine with lawful immigration. I think it should be merit-based, as the president has outlined, and there's no reason for Americans to have to suffer these horrible consequences of our southern border being wide open. And so I'm so glad to hear also this description from General Terrence O'Shaughnessy. He's the head of the U.S. Northern Command. So if you're not as familiar with the military, the U.S. Northern Command simply covers North America. It's all of our armed forces under the Department of Defense. And this General Terrence O'Shaughnessy, heads up that branch of our military management, if you will. So, again, we don't need Congress to tell us if we can fly C-130s down and drop, Humvees all over the place or stand up tent cities and, set up infrastructure and porta potties. We don't need permission from Congress to do any of this. It's already authorized under the military, and the commander-in-chief of the United States military is Donald J. Trump, the president of the United States. So the unintended consequence, again, is that we're going to actually get something done on the border because the liberals are trying to bust down our southern border, and we just can't have that. So let's listen to General O'Shaughnessy here in number 6.
Due to the large size of the potential caravans that may arrive at the border, however, the Department of Homeland Security has further requested the support of the Department of Defense. This is in addition to the 2,000 National Guard personnel already augmenting operations under Operation Guardian Support and making an impact in border security, supporting apprehensions and drug seizures since last year. Specifically, CBP has requested that DoD provide support in several key areas. Significant air and ground transportation and logistics support to move CBP personnel and equipment to locations of operational focus, engineering capabilities and equipment to help ensure our ability to secure our legal crossings in key areas of the border, medical support units, mobile housing for sustaining CBP deployed personnel, and extensive planning support. I will turn it over to General O'Shaughnessy to detail DoD's robust response to our request for support in just a moment. But let me close by saying that regardless of the operational contingencies we face, along with its interagency partners and unprecedented support from DoD, CBP will ensure border security. We will not allow a large group to enter the U.S. unlawfully. We will maintain lawful trade and travel to the greatest extent possible. We will act in accordance with the highest principles of law enforcement. We will treat intending migrants humanely and professionally at all times, and the safety of CBP personnel, especially our law enforcement personnel on the front lines, as well as the traveling public, will remain paramount.
Now, I'm sorry, I told you that was General Terrence O'Shaughnessy. I listened to the entire press conference yesterday. It was live during the program, so I watched the live stream of it after the show. And there was some audio from General Terrence O'Shaughnessy. We didn't get that. What we got was 2 bits from Kevin McLellan, U.S. Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection. Now, I can tell you what the general discussed when it was his turn to talk, and that was more of the deployment side of the efforts and how they were going to use so the portable barriers and different mechanisms, and that some of the people who would be going down have been trained in riot control. And so they're going to be there and they're going to know what to do when the migrant horde arrives, the first wave, second wave, third wave, and how to control the groups of individuals so that women and children aren't harmed, but people who are violent will be apprehended. And obviously anyone who's violent at the border is not going to be eligible for asylum. The other thing that was pointed out by General Terrence O'Shaughnessy is that the first natural place that you arrive at as a migrant that offers you assistance is where your refugee or asylum status ends if you refuse that assistance. So any migrant who has refused assistance, and that's the entire caravan, they've refused assistance from the country of Mexico, they've proven that they are not asylum candidates. It's a pretty interesting thing when you look at the law, when you look at the rule, what the rules are, and you apply them without regard to political factions or ideology, you suddenly become patently aware that these people aren't actually traveling because they're afraid or because they don't have anywhere else to go, or they need opportunity, they need jobs, because they could find all of that in Mexico. They want to come to America because we have a huge welfare state, and they're going to be able to come here and get benefits and live the high life that we've worked so hard to create for our own citizens. And they're not willing to come in through the normal ports of entry, through the regular asylum process, or through the regular immigration process that we provided that allows 1 million individuals to enter our country on a yearly basis. We're more than generous since our population is only 300 plus million. 320 million, including the illegal immigrants. Come on. How many more people a year are we supposed to take in? Ann Coulter's comment from a couple days ago is perfect. We just allow all of the invading hordes to come on in and set up shop if you want to turn America into Tijuana. Look at California. Look at it. Huge portions of California where they don't even speak English anymore. And it looks just like south of the border there, with people selling fruit on the side of the road, not on stands, they're selling on the side of the road, living there, migrant people selling fruit out of the back of trucks, so they live in the truck. I mean, it's just potholes, dirt roads, paving that's gone bad and has never been repaired. This is what California is turning into. That's not what they put on the tourism commercials, obviously, but California is an example of what the rest of this country could look like if we allow our border to be completely obliterated. This has zero to do with being afraid of Mexicans, xenophobia, any kind of hatred. Nationalism just means America first. It doesn't mean racism of any kind. If it had anything to do with racism, I would never, ever be a part of it. But I prefer to categorize myself by my positioning in the kingdom. Child of the king, wife to my husband, mother to the children, and then, radio host and a bunch of other cool stuff. Not black, not American. Yeah, those things are true, but they're not my primary identifiers. Good evening from the heartland. You have oneamericanewsnow.com up next.
Family Talk.
Secular progressives in the United States have worked to alter the very nature of our republic.
For the progressives, there are no longer any God-given natural rights.
AFA Executive Vice President Ed Vitagliano helps you understand the progressive threat to the American Republic. Get your copy of this powerful DVD from the AFA Cultural Institute at afastore.net.
Truth, wisdom, empowered urban family talk. A ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. President Trump is set to travel to the historic hub of Pittsburgh's Jewish community as the first funerals are to be held for the 11 victims of the synagogue shooting. The president is expected to meet with first responders and community leaders. The White House says the purpose of Trump's visit is to express the support of the American people and to grieve with the Pittsburgh community. Local and religious leaders are divided on whether the president should visit. A Central American migrant caravan is pressing on as the Pentagon sends support troops to the U.S.-Mexico border. Fox's Rachel Sutherland has more.
More than 2 weeks of walking taking a toll. Some migrants have dropped out of the caravan, but others are pressing on towards Mexico City, in spite of President Trump sending more than 5,000 support troops to the southern border. Vice President Mike Pence told Politico that asylum seekers should only come through official ports of entry.
The president is simply determined to make sure that we've got the manpower on the border to provide the support as appropriate to the Border Patrol.
The troops will be armed, but will not be acting in a law enforcement capacity. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
Well, the midterm election is 1 week away, and issues that could impact the vote are the caravans of migrants from Central America headed to the southern U.S. border, not to mention the Trump administration's response. Speaking about this on Washington Watch with Tony Perkins, Rachel Alexander of The Stream says it could help conservative candidates.
You know, here in Arizona, where we're pretty conservative, it has the effect of making more conservatives show up and vote. They like to see a crackdown. Under Obama, we wouldn't have seen the president responding by sending these troops to the border. So I think it's going to overall help candidates in Arizona.
More about the midterm election at onenewsnow.com. The trial is underway for the man charged with setting off a bomb in a New York City transit hub. Fox's Gernal Scott has that story.
A jury was seated in the federal case against Akayed Ullah early this morning to set the stage for opening statements and initial testimony. Ullah is accused in a 6-count indictment of having multiple explosive devices, setting off one of them in New York City's Port Authority terminal last December. The judge told jurors Ullah is also accused of supporting a terrorist group through his actions. Only Ullah was significantly wounded, suffering burns from the blast. 3 travelers were slightly hurt. Ullah could face up to life in prison if convicted. In New York City, Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Russian-made military weapons are heading to Cuba. Fox's Evan Brown reports from Miami.
A Russian newspaper reports the Kremlin is loaning Cuba $50 million and that the island nation, once in allegiance with the Soviet Union, will buy Russian weapons for its military. The two nations will sign an arms agreement when the new Cuban president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, visits Russia and meets with Vladimir Putin. The deal reportedly will include armed vehicles, helicopters, and small arms. The arms sale comes as tensions rise between the U.S. and Cuba, with reinstated limits on U.S. tourism on the island.
Harley-Davidson is recalling nearly 200,000 motorcycles in the U.S. because Harley says they can get stuck in gear due to a clutch problem. The recall covers 26 models from the 2017 and 2018 model years. Harley says in documents that it has reports of 5 crashes, but no injuries. In final news this hour, Jeopardy fans can now stream their favorite show on Netflix. Michelle Polino has details.
Jeopardy! Netflix starts streaming Jeopardy today. The streaming giant announced Monday, according to Variety, that they acquired 45 episodes of the Alex Trebek-fronted quiz show. Although this is not the first streaming deal for the show, Sony Pictures TV made a deal with Hulu for 60 episodes back in August. Now, if you're a Netflix subscriber, you'll be getting the same as Hulu because the 45 episodes are a subset of the 60 already available. The deal includes a Tournament of Champions, a college championship at Kids Week, and some of the show fans' favorite episodes.
That's all our time for this hour. For more news, visit onenewsnow.com.
Hello
AFR listeners, my name is Vladimir. I received my Operation Christmas Child shoebox during a harsh winter in Ukraine, where I grew up. My favorite item was minty dental floss. I remember thinking, wow, I guess they have interesting candy in America. I want children to experience the same unconditional love I did at the age of 9. You can get involved by visiting afr.net and clicking on the Operation Christmas Child banner today.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Our message to the organizers and participants of this caravan is simple. As the President and Secretary Nielsen have made clear, we will not allow a large group to enter the United States in an unsafe and unlawful manner.
If you can't get asylum, will you consider crossing illegally?
Yes, I'm thinking that's no problem for me, for nobody over here, because I want to go there.
So 5,000 troops won't stop you, you'll still go?
Yes, I want to go over there. Nobody can stop me, and nobody can stop these people.
If Republicans retain control of the House and the Senate, next year we will do reconciliation and make these tax cuts permanent.
We ought to have tax reform, and we ought to start by making it so simple that you don't have to hire a lawyer to find out how much you owe every year. We live in the only country in the world where it takes more brains to figure out your income tax than it does to earn the income.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Welcome to the program. Thanks for being here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. We're going to be doing it's going to be another gallop through this hour. I had a few people already comment online that the first hour was pretty intense. It is intense, but that I'm hoping is what you're tuning in for. And definitely my intention is to inform you and to equip you. And you are equipped. I'm just talking about information. You are equipped for whatever it is that you have to do. If you're a mom, if you're working and you're managing thousands of people, if you run a small business, if you're someone's employee and you're just getting started out in life, whatever you have on your plate for today, you are equipped and able to accomplish it through Christ Jesus. You want to know him as your Lord and Savior? All you got to do is ask him to come into your heart and forgive you for your sins. You got to believe that he died on the cross, Jesus Christ did, rose on the third day, went down, took the keys to hell and Satan and death and banished all of that, and basically now at the right hand of the Father, and that he is God also, Jesus Christ. And you're there, baby. Find a church, get baptized. Welcome to the family. For everyone else who is already in the family, you are equipped. You are equipped. You are righteous. You are clothed in white. Your sin debt has been paid for. You are forgiven. You are no longer condemned. There is no condemnation in Jesus Christ. You are anointed. You have the favor of God on your life, and all you have to do is walk in it in obedience. So you're equipped to do whatever it is that you have to do. And if you feel faint, if you feel weak, cry out to him and he will give you strength and help you to bear that load. He'll take your load from you and you will be able to accomplish all that you've been set out to accomplish for today. So this hour of the program, we're going to be talking about the hostility towards President Trump. We have some awesome audio from Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House, author, so many different things. We have a little bit of audio from him, and then we're going to talk about what GOP tax reform 2.0 would look like. I know the story is that the president talked about, but we got into that in hour one, and the podcast can be found at afr.net and also urbanfamilytalk.com. We got into that already. I'm not going to spend the whole show on that because you need other information as well. And tax reform 2.0 is super important. And you know why? It's super important because we need it. We need for the government to be starved off a little bit. If you cut, you can't cut it off, but if you just tighten the spigot up a little bit, we can get government people to start thinking about the money that they spend as instead of an infinite pot that just overflows with cash. They should be thinking we got to be as wise and prudent as we can with this money because we aren't guaranteed to have it. Zero-based budgeting is what we need to see. And my sincere hope is that the president is able to get that implemented after the midterm. I hope it's still something that's on his plate that he's considering. And then we are going to also speak with Linda Chavez. She's the director of Becoming American Initiative. Now, I went to the website, and the website calls itself the Conservative Consensus on Immigration. Now, I can tell you right now, we're going to have a good interview. We're not going to overtalk each other. We're not going to fight. But I am going to listen to her explain to me how I, as an American taxpayer and an actual citizen, should be in favor of open borders. She has a lot of Republicans on here listed, but if you look at who they are, unfortunately, I see Mia Love. Pretty sad, as I've supported her candidacy and everything about her greatly, to see her siding with pro-illegal immigration activists. Also, she has Jeff Flake on here, who she'll have to change his designation. She has Senator Jeff Flake, R. Arizona. He's soon to be no longer Senator Flake because he's not running again because he's too moderate for the new Trump Republican Party. So we'll be speaking with her about her Becoming American initiative, her defense of DACA and Dreamers, and all of that. That'll be in the last segment of the show. It should be very interesting. Again, we're not going to fight. We're going to talk about immigration and why she's pro-illegal immigration and how I, as a taxpayer, should be, open to that. So right now I want to get into Newt Gingrich talking about this media hostility towards Donald Trump. Just to kind of freshen it up a little bit, new study out by MRC TV that shows that the 92% number remains. In the 2-3 weeks intervening since the first survey they had came out and said that 92% of the coverage of the president was negative, 51% of Democrats' coverage is negative, but a bulk of that negative coverage had to do with Elizabeth Warren and her birth certificate or her DNA test. Well, if you take that out, the Democrats are trending towards positive coverage by the media, while the Republicans receive almost exclusively negative coverage. Here's Newt Gingrich talking about that. That's number one.
Well, I think the level of hostility is beyond anything we've ever seen. I think the last study said 92% of the news media was hostile to Trump, of the actual coverage, and story by story by story. I think if you were openly pro-Trump in the New York Times newsroom, they'd fire you, or the Washington Post. They would just fire you. They'd say, clearly, you don't understand. You shouldn't be here. I mean, to take the example about what Trump was saying about nationalism, really one of the great magic moments in American history is Benjamin Franklin, who goes to England to represent the colony of Pennsylvania, and after 7 years realizes that he will never be accepted as an Englishman, that the aristocracy simply will not accept him, even though he was a world-famous scientist and a very wealthy man. And people have said he left as a British subject, he came back as an American. And in a way, this thing about being an American starts there.
And so this is something that you will find in most European countries. So European countries have, up until just recently, with their own migrant issues from people coming from foreign countries. Remember, this is all precipitated. Let's just go back real quick. I just tell you this real quick. Back when Saddam Hussein was in charge of Iraq and Muammar Gaddafi was in charge of Libya, they were dictators, they were despots, they were bloody murderers, but they kept control of their populations. And so while we didn't like the way they governed their people, they were better than, what the situation we have now, where it's just, there's no leader and there are these tribal factions and there's constant war. One of the things that Libya was able to do was to prevent people who wanted to just overwhelm Europe by running over it by basically economic migrants. Libya wouldn't permit that. But now that we have no known leader in Libya, no single figurehead to run the country, the migrant caravans have advanced and Europe is changing. And if you think that's a racist statement, I should knock you upside the head with a piece of rolled up newspaper. It's not about racism. In order for Italy to be Italian, it has to be full of Italian people. And if you think there's something wrong with that, how about if you let me bring a whole bunch of my kinfolk from all over the country and from both sides of my family and my extended relatives from me being married to a huge family. My husband's family is enormous. It spans the continent in Hawaii, Alaska, Northeast, Northwest. He's got people all over the country. How about if I just take 10% of my husband's people and plant them at your house, and then we'll see how long your house, if your last name is Johnson, how long your Johnson home is a Johnson home. It won't be Johnson for long if I drop off 100 of my husband's relatives. It will be Washington, will it not? It's the same thing with a country. If a nation is no longer populated by people who speak its language, practice its customs, and believe its the core beliefs of that country, then you have effectively overrun that country. You've taken it over. You've invaded it. You have converted it to something else. And these European countries are much more susceptible to that because they are small and they were much more homogenous. America is the only place on the planet where you move here, you get citizenship, you start speaking English, and you're an American. You can call yourself a Black American, an African American. You can call yourself an Italian American or a Chinese American. But for all intents and purposes, if I hear you speaking English and I see you walking around these streets, I think you're an American. It is only until you tell me I'm here illegally or I'm here on an H-1B1 visa, I speak great English, but I'm actually Pakistani. That's the only way I'm going to know. In America, you don't have to be white or black or Asian to be an American. You don't have to present a certain way. All you have to do is have citizenship. That's not the same as it is in Germany and other places. In Germany, if you're not white and, naturally speaking German as your first tongue, you're not really German. You're a third country national, or you're an immigrant, or the bougie name for it is you're an expat. You're expats. You are citizens of another country, but you choose to live in Germany because you love it. My mom has some best friends who've been in Germany for 30 plus years, and they are expats there, and they have the ability to work there indefinitely, and they have jobs. And some of them have worked with the U.S. federal government because, you can work with whoever is there. It's just get your work visa and work. And they travel all over the country. They're in the United States a ton. Some of them even have homes in the U.S. They live primarily in Germany, but then they have their home country. One of my mom's very best friends is Ghanaian, and she has a fantastic education. And she was educated in England, and she's lived her entire life in Germany, married to a German man who is a citizen of Germany, obviously. And they had a house in Las Vegas. They had a house in Germany, and she has family in Ghana that they visit regularly, and the kids come and visit her there in Germany. That's the way it is everywhere but here. And we got people screaming and yelling because someone's been messing with our birthright citizenship thing, and we have like an attitude about it. If you're out there in listener land and you have a permanent tan like me, you should be totally ticked off that people from some other country are using a provision that was specifically laid out for us to get citizenship in this country. There's nothing like having someone stand on your neck to get what they want, is it? So you can't possibly be sitting there thinking we have to let them in. Why? Do you have to let my husband's 100 relatives into your house? They don't need to come to your house. This isn't about where they need to go. It's about the example that your house would no longer be your house if 100 of my relatives come live there. And it's not even about need for these people. Yes, they say they need to come here. I also need to have, a penthouse apartment in Manhattan. Ever since the first time I went to Manhattan, I thought, ooh, it'd be so nice to have a place here. But I don't have one because I don't have the dough to get one. And then I dare say, because my husband is the head over here, even if we did say, you know what, we're going to drop some cash and get a place in New York, he'd say, not in New York. We'd get some place somewhere else. You see what I'm saying? This isn't about what other people need. I need a lot of things, but it's up to me to get them and to get them lawfully. And so these people who are coming from South America, they have needs. I have no doubt about it. I would be shocked if they didn't have needs. All human beings have needs. The question is, why is it our responsibility to fulfill your needs? I'm sorry. Tell me one more time. Help me out here one more time. Why is it our responsibility to help you fulfill your needs? So here's Newt Gingrich cracking wise. I've got 1 minute left. About John Kerry actually being an American, which he's not. He's a globalist. It's number 2.
And I think it's important to recognize that what Trump is saying when he uses the word nationalism isn't at a level of the federalist, anti-federalist arguments. Right. But it's saying, look, these guys on the left want to basically sell our country out for some kind of global cause, whether it's the Paris Accords or the International Criminal Court or the United Nations. I tell people the reason that John Kerry runs all over the world the way he does, and the reason he still sees the Iranians, is that in Kerry's mind, he was never really the American Secretary of State. He was a world Secretary of State doing good things on behalf of the world, and which is why I don't think you could charge him with the Logan Act, because you'd have to be an American in order to be charged with the Logan Act. And Kerry's not psychologically an American. He's psychologically a person of the globe and would regard people who care about America as sort of pygmies, obsolete.
Obsolete pygmies. How dare he? I don't care if he is married to Patricia Hines and he's worth a whole lot of money. None of that stuff matters to me. In fact, I'm the opposite of John Kerry. If I encounter you and I believe that you believe as I do in American sovereignty, then we're automatically from the same place. We share the same blood. We share the same history. We share the same flag. John Kerry's not one of us. He's not one of ours. How about that? Straight from the pygmies. We'll be back with more after this. Stay there.
Len Ingram of Redeem Clean felt God call him to support the American Family Association.
I'm a laundryman. I'm the son of a laundryman, too. I love clean clothes. I love the business. I love everything about it. This project was built exclusively to support AFA and AFR. There's no strings attached. Another thing that I would like to see come out of this is that I would like to see other business people feel a calling to support ministries wherever and whatever they do to share the gospel of Jesus Christ.
In addition to your regular AFA giving, Redeem Clean Laundry Detergent allows you to increase your support of AFA just by continuing to wash your family's clothes. For clean laundry and support of a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Learn more, find options, and get Redeem Clean products at afastore.net. That's afastore.net.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Senator Ben Sasse writes in his new book about the vanishing American adult, our coming-of-age crisis, and how to rebuild a culture of self-reliance. He recently took some material from the book and wrote about what happens when we don't raise kids to become adults. He tells the story of being tapped to become president of Midland University at the age of 37 years old. The board of directors did so because Ben Sasse has the reputation as a turnaround guy who specializes in helping troubled companies become solvent. The university certainly needed his help. They were on the verge of missing payroll 4 months in a row, but he soon discovered that finances might not have been the biggest problem at the school. One student, for example, staged a sit-in at the president's office and announced that he would not leave until the president resolved the scheduling problem for him. He was upset that the registrar wouldn't be offering a particular course he needed the following semester. When Ben Sasse engaged the student in conversation, he proclaimed, "You need to figure this out. I pay tuition to go to this school, which means I pay your salary, so you work for me." The university conducted annual surveys about student experience on campus. It not only showed their lack of a work ethic, but a lack of understanding of the difference between production and consumption. The activities they said they enjoyed most were sleeping in, skipping classes, and partying. A few mentioned canceled classes as the best part of their 4 years. I hope that some of these examples seem crazy to you. Unfortunately, for many in this emerging generation, these attitudes seem just about right. That is why Ben Sasse wants to remind these young people that growing up involves maturity, hard work, and even delayed gratification. If not, we'll have a country of perpetual kids. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Graceworks Pictures, Indivisible, based on the true story of Army Chaplain Darren Turner and his wife Heather. Rated PG-13. Now playing. IndivisibleMovie.com.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
It's really about keeping the momentum going. Obviously, the economy is booming. We're on track for the first total year over year, plus 3% economic growth in more than a decade. We're seeing jobs coming back, paychecks going up. Main Street is hiring again. So the president's really about focused on more of that economic growth. The House has passed 2.0 before we left for October with 44 Democrat votes for this 3-bill package. It's now over in the Senate, and I think permanence really depends on this election. If Republicans retain control of the House and the Senate, next year we will do reconciliation and make these tax cuts permanent. The president wants to go even farther. He's really focused on the middle class. He just believes they're the ones who get squeezed the most. He's asked us, and we've worked with him on developing another 10% middle class tax cuts for workers and families, and so we'll be ready to move with that as well.
Do you like the sound of that? Does that just get you up a little bit? You want to maybe lift some hands in the sanctuary and just thank the Lord for people who agree that we should keep more of our money? Oh yeah, and don't don't fake on this. If you're making more money, whether it's the tax cuts or anything else, remember the order of things, which is that you're tithing and you're offering and then you're paying them bills. So if your budget's not permitting you to tithe, you're not living in good order. You're not living according to what the Bible has outlined for us. And you're definitely not lining yourself up for those blessings to chase you down and overtake you. So, financial peace, so many other different ways you can find to get that house in order. And when you start one little step towards God, he comes the rest of the way. So there is nothing but to actually do it. Get it done. Get that tithing out of the way. As someone who in the beginning we struggle with that as a couple, I can tell you the more time you spend struggling with it and not taking care of it, the more time you spend outside the blessings that God has for you. It's an amazing, abundant life living in obedience to Christ. So just get it done. Just make it happen. So that's that GOP tax reform 2.0 already passed the House, just waiting for that takeover in the Senate. Yes, the Republicans control the Senate, but I mean real numbers. Like there's a possibility that the Republicans could gain seats in the Senate, which would enable them to actually cleanly pass tax reform through the Senate and get it on the president's desk. What could be better than that? Let's get that. Let's make that happen. So now I want to flip over to Hillary Clinton's comments, which she's had all the wind sucked out of them. All the coverage that could have been of people castigating her for saying this has kind of been sucked out because, this is a big momentous day, having the president actually address an issue that conservatives, and specifically Ann Coulter in many of her books, have covered. So many others have covered this, which is that we have people abusing our citizenship system, coming here to drop a baby on American soil while they are citizens of another country, yet claiming that their baby is an American. And this has been going on for a long time, since Ted Kennedy in the 60s, and we've got to put a stop to it. And it looks like President Trump not only has the wherewithal, but he has the authority under the Constitution and the powers that have been remanded to him to cover immigration by Congress, because he is in the executive. Yeah, it's amazing how when it's good when a Democrat's in charge, Congress run by Democrats is like, yeah, you can have all this power in the executive. Take it. And then when they take it and leave it there, then when a Republican is in charge, they're like, you don't have that power. Yes, I do. So, and that's the executive speaking. It's not really about Donald Trump or a Republican or a Democrat. It's that Congress remanded the power to the executive, and it remains there. They've not taken it back. So you've got Hillary Clinton joking about black people all looking alike. Now, I didn't save the audio of her saying she still wanted to be the president. You know why? Because we already know that. We already know she still wants to be the president. We already know she's like a virus that you can't knock it down. It's that virus where they give you the Tamiflu and you're still sick a week later, and the doctor is like, we've never seen anything like this. That's Hillary Clinton. So here she is. I'm never shocked by her. Not anymore. But this, even, I was a little bit like one eyebrow up. Like, what did she just say? It's number 4.
That's childish.
What do you think of Cory Booker's? And you didn't comment on him, and you feel free.
Oh, I adore him.
What do you think about him saying kick them in the shins, essentially? Start to get to that kind of political.
Well, that was Eric Holder.
Yeah, Eric Holder.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know they all look alike.
No, they don't. Oh, well done. Hillary.
No, they don't. Her immediate reaction was to shut that down because she's been well trained. You can't talk about black people. You can't make jokes about black people. And then Hillary Clinton was like, oh, I can. My husband's the first black president, and Bill Clinton, because he's a cheater. And I don't care, because all I care about is power. Unlimited power, baby. And so I can joke about black people. I said we need to bring them to heel. I said blacks were natural born predators. Are you kidding me? I could say they all look the same. I'm Hillary Clinton. That is who this woman is. And so if you are sitting there, because I'm smiling, if you're watching on the live stream, you see I'm smiling about this, because what else can you do but smile when someone shows you who they really are and what they really think about you? I got Hillary Clinton's number. I had it way back in the 90s when she said blacks were natural born predators. Oh, I understood what she meant. It was politically expedient for her to come down hard on crime because that is what people wanted back then. And now that people are not concerned with crime and people want to be PC, she gets to show people how powerful she is by not being PC. Come on, play the game. You can smile at it when you see game, you recognize it. You got to see it for what it is. She's powerful. She's outside of the PC rules that govern the rest of us pansies. The rest of us We can't crack jokes about ethnic groups. The rest of us, especially if you're on the right, you better not even think about saying something a little too incendiary. You can't go there. You're not powerful enough. You want to know who the most powerful entity is? It's the one you can't poke fun at. Remember when everyone was calling her a side of beef and saying how funny it was that she got thrown in the back of that Scooby van because she had went into some kind of strange seizure, and then they couldn't control her, so they just threw her in the back of the van and left her shoe on the sidewalk and drove away. And then when people started mocking it, they were like, you can't mock her. That's misogynistic. But she can mock you, black constituent who votes for Hillary Clinton, who she thinks you're a natural born predator and that you need to be brought to heel, and also that you all look alike. Yeah, I said you because I'm not one of her constituents. I'm not one of her voters. I did not vote for Hillary Clinton, and I would never have, and I will never. So know who you can make fun of and know who can make fun of you. She gets to make fun of you because in her mind, Democrats already have your votes. And so if she's sitting in an audience full of white liberals, she definitely can crack a joke about how black people all look alike. And what are you going to do about it? Not vote for the Democrats? Of course you're going to vote for the Democrats. If you don't, Joe Biden will come and tell you that they're going to put y'all all back in chains. He'll stop speaking the kings and queens English of old, American English for current users. He'll stop speaking like he normally talks and go into a black dialect to tell you that Republicans are going to re-enslave you if you don't vote for Democrats. While Hillary Clinton laughs and say all black people look the same. I know they all look the same. That's an old joke. That went out like 15, 20 years ago. That whole joke, oh, white people all look alike, Chinese people all look alike, black people all look alike. That joke went out decades ago. And she just broke it back out and dusted it off and used it. And who's doing anything about it? I'll just double check. I don't want to be that one. Hillary Clinton. I'm on Twitter. This is where you can tell if somebody's getting torn up. Clinton's 2020 waffling presents a challenge for Democrats. Okay, so. Candace Owens says Hillary Clinton, the woman who offered the black community hot sauce plus a free Jay-Z and Beyonce concert in exchange for our vote, now says that black people all look alike. She has 31,000 hearts and 16,000 retweets on that, but that's Candace Owens. I'm talking about some people on the left. Okay, Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire says Hillary Clinton says blacks all look alike, then laughs as audience applauds. But that's Ben Shapiro. James Woods kicks into her about it. Paul Joseph Watson, he's taken her to task about it. James Woods says, as Freud once said, there are no jokes. Larry Elder. Larry Elder says we should all lighten up. Okay. Yeah. I think we should all lighten up. But I also think we should recognize that some people get to crack jokes that other people can't crack. Any Republican, elected or otherwise, who said as a joke that all blacks look alike would be taken to task by Simone Sanders and Don Lemon on CNN. And they would have panel after panel after panel. His show would be 6 hours long, and even Anderson Cooper would weigh in, and they would all talk about the travesty that is the Republican Party and the amount of racism that's present on that side because someone cracked a joke about all black people looking alike. There is no double standard. There are just standards for Democrats, and everybody else gets the guillotine. That's what's going on here. So while I like Larry Elder and I think he's brilliant, he's not, this isn't a case of, oh, well, she just cracked a joke. It's a joke that Republicans can't crack. So if only certain people are allowed to crack jokes, are they really jokes? I mean, are they really? I don't think so. I don't think so. So do Reverend Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton look alike? Do I look like one of those two or any other black person? I mean, come on. It's a joke to her, but it's not a joke to me because other people, I can't even make that joke. Imagine they'd have me on Mediaite if I cracked a joke like that on this program. No, I don't think it's right. So she's not going to get dragged on Twitter. Black Twitter is not going to tear her up for saying that. She deserves to get torn up for it, but she's not going to. Leftists are not going to take her on. Really, a lot of people on the left are just hoping that she doesn't run in 2020. They're hoping that she will fade into that good night as much as is humanly possible for her so that they can run a candidate that they can all get excited about, because they weren't all excited about her. But I just think it's funny that, you know, when we look at how things are going and who gets to make what jokes, that's what we have going on here. That you actually have Hillary Clinton saying that all blacks look alike as a joke and that's okay. So I know there's a lot of talk about this possibility that the Democrats take back Congress. Anything's possible. I don't subscribe to this, you know, kind of fear mongering, and I don't know, you know, I'm not, it's not over yet. People are still voting, and the Republicans actually have the edge in early voting, which is unheard of for Republicans. So I'm not going to be one of those people who goes about telling everybody the sky is falling, but it is important that you get out and vote. It's super important that you get out and vote. Don't waste time with worrying about what's going to happen and the outcome. Pray and vote. So the AP has actually come out with their version of what the president said today. And I wish I could say that the Associated Press was some organization that I could trust to have unbiased news reporting, but they're not. They start off their article here: Trump targets citizenship, stokes pre-election migrant fears. Is it fear? If it's 10,000 people marching towards the southern border, or is it concern that 10,000 people are marching towards the southern border? I'm not afraid of anything. Well, okay, I'll take that back. I'm afraid that our elected officials will do nothing and that those people will gain access to the country, setting a precedent that our borders will never, ever be the same again. But I don't have any irrational fears about it. Thousands of U.S. troops to stop an invasion of migrants, visions of tent cities for asylum seekers, an end to the Constitution's guarantee of birthright citizenship. They go on to try to tie all of that to fear-mongering by Donald Trump, and they mention the more than 5,000 military troops that are being sent down. They include in their article this video of President Trump speaking to Axios on HBO, and it looks to me like they're in the White House. It makes me wonder, can anybody just get an interview with the president in the White House, or do you have to be HBO? Interesting. With well-timed interviews on Fox and Axios on HBO, Trump revived some of his hardest-line immigration ideas, much to the joy and exuberance of his voters. I added that part. An executive order to revoke the right of citizenship for babies born to non-U.S. citizens on American soil, and the prolonged detention of anyone coming across the U.S.-Mexico border, including those seeking asylum, in tent cities erected all over the place. Don't you just love the colloquialisms of someone who he eschews the intelligentsia in favor of language that every American can understand? You gotta love it. So the administration on Monday also announced plans to deploy 5,200 active duty troops, double the 2,000 who are in Syria fighting Islamic State. Now, why is it that every time they talk about this deployment to the southern border, they keep mentioning how many troops are deployed in Syria? We are not at war with Syria. That's number one. And number two, that defense authorization, which was made back when Obama was president and did not go through Congress, is actually not legal. That's what I'm saying. That's not legal. That's not okay. That's not legal. So why should the president even, like, what is the comparison? Why are we suddenly comparing how many troops we have? And we've defeated ISIS. We have crushed them under Donald Trump. So why would we have more troops there than we would have at the southern border? I'll have to pull up a map and see what the landmass of Syria is in comparison to the 3 states that border Mexico, and see if there's any comparison in the amount of troop strength needed there, besides the fact that we're in a multinational coalition in Syria. So other countries have troops there. Great Britain, Russia, I believe the Chinese even have operators there. Why would we need to have more troops there than are absolutely necessary when we have our coalition forces there operating as well? The comparison is spurious. And I'm calling this out for you because when you're reading these news articles, if you just take it at face value, it plants seeds in your mind that make you think in a certain direction. The number of troops deployed in Syria is inconsequential and has nothing to do with how many troops should be sent to the southern border to repel the migrant invasion. Period. We'll be back with our guest, Linda Chavez, Director of Becoming American Initiative, right after these important messages.
This is Life Issues with Brad Mattis, president of Life Issues Institute.
You may have heard about the elitist remark made by Emmanuel Macron, president of France. But did you hear about the response? Macron stated it wasn't possible to find a woman who was perfectly educated to have 7, 8, or 9 children. A flood of very well-educated women throughout the world enlightened him. One with a doctorate from Harvard University tweeted a photo of her with 6 of her 8 children. A Stanford graduate provided a picture with her 11 kids. Women with degrees in music, pharmacology, engineering, and business weighed in. In the end, the president of France was educated that his elitist attitude was condescending, ignorant, and sexist. Maybe he should seek their advice. Sounds like he could use help running things in France.
Follow us on Twitter at Life Issues USA and stay informed, more informed than you've ever been.
I'm Will Addison, Director of Urban Family Talk. We desire to be a movement of time tellers. In 1 Chronicles 12:32 it says, "The sons of Issachar were men who had understanding of the time, to know what Israel ought to do." In these perilous times, God is raising up a people of discernment who will see, pray, and act. We sound the alarm as watchmen. We cry aloud that God's people may be activated for his service. Join the movement at urbanfamilytalk.com.
My name's Tommy. I really tried to do the best I could to be a good husband, to be a father. I couldn't quit using drugs. I was stuck. Since coming here, my life is better. I have hope, and I know I don't ever have to live that way again.
If you know an adult or teenager who's struggling with a chemical addiction, Teen Challenge can help. Call us today at 417-581-2181 or reach us online at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
I'm Hank Weinblum with your word of the week. Like those suspicious packages, handle this word with care.
You know what I am? I'm a nationalist, okay? I'm a nationalist.
To the president and his supporters, it means the same as patriotism, putting America first.
I'm somebody that loves our country.
An early form of nationalism, the American Revolution. Later, an independent Ireland and the State of Israel. But nationalism also conjures up ugly images. World Wars I and II, the Holocaust, ethnic cleansing in Yugoslavia, the Civil War in Syria. Some historians say nationalism sparked the American Civil War. Some hear it as code for white Christian supremacy. The opposite of nationalism might be globalism, nations working together. But the president might argue nationalism trumps globalism.
I am absolutely a nationalist, and I'm proud of it.
Because of its history, nationalism is a politically loaded word, and when something's loaded, it should be used carefully. With your word of the week, Hank Weinblum, Fox News.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you for being here. I'm excited to speak to our next guest. It's Linda Chavez. She's the director of Becoming American Initiative. Linda, thank you for joining the show.
It's great to be with you.
So let's talk about this. You have Becoming America Initiative, which is a website that touts defense of the Dreamers and deferred action on childhood arrivals. And the title of your homepage is The Conservative Consensus on Immigration. Share with us why you would, as I'm assuming a Republican, be in favor of amnesty and legalization for people who are in the country illegally.
Well, no one is talking about amnesty at this point. The last amnesty, of course, was given by my former boss, President Ronald Reagan. I was director of public liaison in the Reagan White House and was also the director of the Civil Rights Commission under President Reagan. But what we do talk about is a way to fix our immigration problem, because our immigration system is broken. The president is right about that. And what we need to do is to figure out a way to bring the right people here in the right number, to fulfill our needs as a country. And so I've been talking about this for 30 years or more. We need a generous legal immigration program that brings people with all sorts of skills, people who are engineers and mathematicians, scientists, etc., but also people who come to pick our crops and clean our buildings.
Doing the
and
jobs
hang
Americans
drywall.
won't do?
Pardon me?
Doing the jobs Americans won't do?
Doing the jobs that Americans currently do not choose to do. That's right.
So you're aware that books by prominent writers on the conservative side of the political aisle people have done the research and found that in case after case, taking, let's say, chicken processing plants, for example, numerous raids on chicken processing plants across the country netted illegal immigrants that were deported. And upon deportation of those illegal immigrants, the jobs were filled by Black Americans who replaced those illegal alien
that's
immigrants.
Not accurate. Can I interrupt you there?
No,
Because I
you
know a
can't,
great deal
because
about
I'm
this.
not going to interrupt you. So I don't want you to interrupt me, because
Okay.
that makes the conversation really contentious and the listeners can't
Well,
understand what we're saying.
I understand that.
And
but
I'm
just
Linda.
stated something
You said
as
you
fact,
worked
which I happen to
under
know a great
President
deal
Reagan,
about.
and that means you've been in the political realm for decades. And I respect your tenure there. But I read the AP news reports about these chicken processing plants with my own two eyes. Stories by the
But
AP, which
I
is a
happen to
nonpartisan
serve
organization.
I happen to have served as the director of the largest chicken processing company.
So are you
in
saying
the
because you
country
worked
at the
there
time.
that the other stories didn't happen, that other people weren't deported and blacks didn't replace those workers because you worked somewhere?
What I'm telling you is that Pilgrim's Pride, which at the time was the largest chicken processing company in the country, this was in 2008, we had a raid, and we had 400 people who were, in fact, pulled out of our processing plants. And this was, by the way, despite the fact that we followed everything, not just to the letter of the law. We went a step further. We were part of the E-Verify system voluntarily, so that we checked people's Social Security numbers to make sure they were entitled to work. When we lost those 400 plus workers, what happened was, yes, we were able to hire people. They didn't last on the job. We had to increase the wages. We had terrible attrition, and the company ended up going bankrupt. This was the largest chicken processor in the country. And
So
part of
hiring
the spiral
Americans
into
causes
bankruptcy-
companies to go out of business, is what you're saying. So in other words,
What I'm saying is that we couldn't hire Americans. They didn't stay on the job.
Okay.
They, in fact, did not stay on the job. And what you see is time and time again that there are jobs that are going wanting. There are lots of jobs out there picking vegetables and fruits. There are jobs out there in the dairy business. There are jobs out there cleaning businesses. I sit now on the board of the largest janitorial company in the country. And I will tell you that we are facing a crisis in terms of being able to find workers who will accept these jobs. And we are a company that is at a very low profit margin. We make less than 5% profit in our company. And so when we cannot find workers to do those jobs, we end up not being able to fulfill our contracts. And this is something I'm not speaking, I have done academic, as you probably know. I have also written books. I've written several books on the topic. I have written articles both for scholarly magazines and for popular magazines, as well as newspaper articles on this subject. But my experience is also as somebody who has worked in business and who has had to deal with the crisis we have in finding people to do certain jobs. And I will tell you, Stacey, it's not because Americans are lazy or because, they have no good work ethic. It's because Americans are too well educated to want to accept jobs that do not use their skills. We have now educated
except for Black Americans who are at the bottom of the educational barrel. So are you aware that Black Americans are not as well educated as other Americans on the whole, percentage-wise, hold fewer college degrees and advanced educational accomplishments like apprenticeships, and you're completely discounting that entire segment of the American populace that still needs entry-level work?
That, Listen,
then
I
what
was
are you
marching
saying?
Civil rights marches before you were born. So don't
good for
try
you.
and
But I'm
use the
talking about your
Federation
current
for
stance on
American
immigration, Linda.
Reform.
You get no
You're
props for
using
me
the
for
fair
that. That's
talking
not
point.
what the subject matter is. If you marched during civil rights before I was born, good for you. Thanks for your service. But we're not talking about civil rights here. We're talking about today, right now, you advocating for people from outside this country to take jobs away from American blacks. So
No,
you're
of course
basically,
not.
your comments here are
no,
erasing
I'm
your
sorry.
work during
You
the civil rights
I'm
movement.
sorry, I won't let you get away with it.
Well,
You are
I'm not getting
not
away with anything.
accurate.
I'm not getting away with anything.
Nobody
I'm going by
taking
what
a
you've said.
job from anyone. We live in a free market economy, and anyone who wants to go in and get a job who is qualified for that job can get it. What I am
Including
telling you
illegal
is
aliens,
employers-
which you're advocating for.
No, I am not advocating for that. Do not put words into my mouth.
I'm hearing you say that you went by E-Verify and still managed to hire people who were in the country illegally.
I am advocating for changing our laws so that we can bring the right people to come to the United States to do jobs that need doing that Americans choose not to do. They choose not to do these jobs, and for good reason in some circumstances. But we need the jobs done. I mean, we can do one of two things. You can get rid of those processing plants here, and you can ship them to Mexico, and you can have people do the jobs there. Or you can bring people here to do the job, who will then spend their money in this country, pay taxes, buy homes, buy cars, shop in our stores, and become Americans, which is what I advocate.
So the information that I've read about this, and specifically the chicken processing plants that you're referring to, that they have such a horrible record of Americans working there, the stories that I've read do not support what you've said. So we have to agree to disagree on that. I don't think it's worth continuing to disagree over.
Those plants. I have actually been on the boards of those plants. I have done
all of them.
So I don't know what you
all
read,
of them.
Stacey, but whatever you're reading is probably propaganda.
No, not propaganda. Regular news outlets.
Studies or fair.
Listen, Linda, I'm not reading propaganda. I'm talking about regular AP and Reuters news stories. So those are mainstream media outlets. They're not on the right. They tend to lean a little left, but they're definitely mainstream media outlets that I read those stories on. So
you can open almost any newspaper in America that will talk about the labor shortage we are facing in this country
absolutely.
today.
There's a labor shortage, but your answer is to bring in foreigners to do it. And that's my next question for you. When you say we need to bring people in to do this work, what mechanism are you preferring? Is it the visa system where they're coming in as temporary workers, or you're talking about bringing people in to give them citizenship to work these jobs?
I think you have both kinds of opportunities available. Some people you want to bring in, they're going to become permanent residents on their path to becoming United States citizens. And there will be some jobs, for example, in the agricultural field, where you may have seasonal jobs. You may want to bring people in as guest workers. They'll do the jobs, and when the work is done, they'll return home. We need both kinds of programs available. Right now, we don't have them.
Okay. So we just have a couple minutes left here, and I'll give you those couple of minutes to address anything in the interview that you want to address, add any more information in, et cetera, what have you.
Well, illegal immigration right now is down to a 50-year low. We basically have remained about static over the last 10 years. The number of illegal immigrants in the U.S. has declined by more than 1 million in the last 10 years. This is the time that we ought to be looking at reforming our legal immigration laws so that we can bring in the right number of people and the right kind of people. And we do it not because we want to be kind to other people. We do it for the good of this country, for making this country great and continuing our heritage as a nation that welcomes people and gives people opportunity and then turns those people into good Americans.
And the current rates of assimilation don't concern you, or I should say non-assimilation.
Well, actually, they actually make me quite pleased. The Mexican and other Latin American and Asian immigrants that are coming to the United States over the last 20 years are, in fact, assimilating at faster rates than the Italians, Jews, Poles, Greeks, Germans, and others did in previous centuries. They're learning English faster, 97%.
According to what metrics?
Generation Hispanic immigrants, according to studies by the U.S. Census Bureau, according to studies by every major organization, Pew Research, and others. Assimilation is taking place at a faster rate today than it did in the past. And I've written whole books about this. I wrote a book called Out of the Barrio, Toward a New Politics of Hispanic Assimilation. It did some path-breaking research in this area. Every study from the National Academy of Sciences to, as I mentioned, the Pew Research Center documents that Hispanic and Asian immigrants are assimilating quickly. They learn English. They move into the middle class.
I need to interrupt you there. So I guess what you're saying completely flies in the face of the numbers of immigrants who are here in this country, illegal immigrants who are using our emergency care systems for their primary source of medical, a number of children who are in American schools who speak a foreign language, the number of schools that are no longer just teaching Spanish as a second language, but are teaching other variations of Latin languages, languages that have never been spoken here before.
Read the National Academy of Sciences study, which is all about assimilation. This is comprehensive data over the last 20 years that includes
the illegal immigration.
It includes everyone who is born, including the illegal population, absolutely.
The teachers, the numbers don't support what you're saying. The numbers that the public schools are currently expending on teaching students English as a second language, the numbers of kids who are being educated at or above grade level, it doesn't support what you're saying. And the biggest deal, the biggest deal about what you're saying, Linda, that doesn't support that Americans don't want more illegal immigration, and they don't want more legal immigration. Study after study has shown that. So you have an utter refusal to acknowledge that Americans have a right to decide how many people are coming into this country and at what rate and for what.
I don't dispute that. I don't dispute that in the slightest. I say
you're advocating against what Americans want. What you're advocating for is not what the bulk of Americans want, according to surveys by the same organizations that you named. I can't understand that.
That we have a debate about this in Congress, that we look at what is in our national interest. And at this point in time, what is in our national interest is bringing in people both at the high end of the skill set and some people at the low end of the skill set to do jobs that Americans choose not to take. And our worry should not be that these people will not, in fact, succeed in the United States, because current immigrants and their children, the second generation, those who are actually born in the United States, the immigrant parents, are not only assimilating, they're actually exceeding the expectations and the achievements of those whose parents were born in the United States. Second generation, whether you're talking about Hispanic or Asian,
totally, and I've given you the last word on this, and I really appreciate your time, but that's the music, and we're out of time for the interview. Thank you for calling in today. Linda Chavez, Director of Becoming Initiative. That's the end of the show. I gave her the last word. I totally disagree with what she said. I totally disagree that she's worked on the board of every single chicken processing plant. And I am not even slightly put down by the fact that she said she was working in civil rights since before I was born. Yay, yippee. Oh, so awesome. So what? America first. Seal the border. Address the immigration problems after we've stopped the inflow. That's it for the show today. Be back with you tomorrow. Citizens, enjoy your evening. God bless you from the Heartland.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of Urban Family Talk, Urban Family Communications, or American Family